What if everything you learned about American history in school was fundamentally wrong? What if, hidden in plain sight across the United States, stand massive stone structures so ancient, so precisely engineered, that they couldn't possibly have been built by the Native American tribes we know? Tonight, we journey into forbidden archaeology, where 14,000-year-old astronomical observatories challenge Darwin, where underground chambers align perfectly with stars that won't occupy those positions for another 26,000 years, and where stone walls stretch for miles, built by hands that history says never existed. These are America's ancient whispers, and someone desperately doesn't want you to hear them. They erased it from the history books. They burned the documents. They silenced the witnesses. But here's what they couldn't destroy: the truth carved into the land itself, preserved in oral traditions, and hidden in the archives they forgot to check. Welcome to Whispers of American History, where we don't just retell the past, we expose what's been deliberately buried. These aren't legends. These are documented events with evidence that will make you question everything you were taught. Before we uncover today's story, if you're not already subscribed, hit that button right now. These hidden histories need to reach as many people as possible. And do me a favor, comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I'm genuinely curious. Are you discovering this truth over breakfast, during your commute, or late at night when you can't sleep? Our community spans the entire globe, and that's something powerful. If you're ready to see American history without the cover-up, you're in the right place. Let's begin. The discovery that shook everything. The morning fog hung thick over the Georgia hills in 1936 when farmer James Ridley's plow struck something that would haunt archaeologists for nearly a century. The metallic clang echoed across his property, and as he cleared away the red Georgia clay, he uncovered the edge of a massive stone wall, perfectly fitted, expertly crafted, and extending far beyond what any colonial settler could have constructed. Ridley spent 3 days excavating. What he found buried beneath centuries of accumulated soil defied every textbook he'd ever read. The wall stretched for over 855 feet, composed of precisely cut stones weighing up to 2 tons each. But the truly disturbing element wasn't the wall's size or construction quality. It was what he found beneath it: charcoal deposits that would later be carbon dated to approximately 8,000 BCE, making this structure older than the Egyptian pyramids by 3 millennia. The academic establishment's response was immediate and absolute: silence. Ridley's discovery was never published in any major archaeological journal. His photographs mysteriously vanished from the local university archives, and within 2 years, the Georgia State Highway Department had paved directly over his excavation site, burying America's secret once more beneath asphalt and willful ignorance. But the Georgia Wall was merely one whisper among thousands, a single note in a symphony of impossible evidence scattered across the North American continent. To understand what we're truly dealing with, we must first acknowledge an uncomfortable truth. The history of pre-Columbian America exists in 2 entirely separate narratives. The first is the sanitized version taught in public schools, a story of nomadic hunter-gatherers crossing the Bering Land Bridge approximately 13,000 years ago, spreading gradually across 2 continents, developing simple tribal societies, and remaining essentially unchanged until European contact in 1492. The second narrative, the one whispered about in suppressed archaeological papers, discussed in private conferences, and documented in thousands of photographs that mainstream academia refuses to examine, tells a radically different story. This is a tale of advanced civilizations, sophisticated astronomical knowledge, massive construction projects, and a technological sophistication that rivals or exceeds many old-world cultures.
The evidence for this second narrative isn't hidden in obscure locations or guarded by fringe theorists. It stands in broad daylight, scattered across 48 states, waiting for anyone with eyes willing to see and minds willing to question.
40 miles north of Boston, nestled in the dense forests of Salem, New Hampshire, stands a structure that mainstream archaeology has desperately tried to explain away for over a century. Known today as America's Stonehenge, though its original name remains lost to time, this 30-acre complex of stone chambers, astronomical alignments, and sacrificial altars predates the arrival of Columbus by thousands of years. The site was first brought to public attention in 1907 when insurance broker William Goodwin purchased the property. What Goodwin discovered wasn't a single structure, but an entire complex. Over 20 stone chambers, some built partially underground, massive worked stones weighing several tons each, a network of walls extending in seemingly random directions, and most disturbingly, a 4.5-ton granite slab featuring a carved speaking tube and drainage channel, a design consistent with sacrificial altars found in ancient Mediterranean cultures. Initial carbon dating of charcoal found within the chambers produced dates ranging from 2000 BCE to 173 BCE. These dates were immediately rejected by establishment archaeologists who insisted the site must be the work of colonial farmers, despite the complete absence of any historical records, land deeds, or colonial-era artifacts anywhere on the property. But the astronomical alignments couldn't be explained away so easily. In 1975, researcher Robert Stone began a systematic survey of the site's stone arrangements. What he discovered sent shockwaves through the small community of researchers who dared to take America's prehistoric past seriously. The site featured precise astronomical alignments marking the summer and winter solstices, the spring and fall equinoxes, and specific stellar events involving significant stars. These alignments weren't approximate, they were accurate to within 1 degree of arc, demonstrating sophisticated astronomical knowledge that couldn't have developed overnight. The speaking tube built into the sacrificial table allowed someone inside the oracle chamber, a fully enclosed stone room located directly beneath the altar, to project their voice through the drainage channel, creating the illusion of the stone itself speaking. This acoustic engineering, combined with the chamber's strategic placement, suggests religious ceremonies of remarkable sophistication. But perhaps the most unsettling element of America's Stonehenge is what researchers call the watch house. This structure, a partially underground chamber with thick stone walls and a roof of massive granite slabs, features a single narrow opening facing directly east. During the winter solstice sunrise, a beam of light enters this opening and illuminates a specific stone deep within the chamber's interior, a stone marked with inscriptions that some researchers believe represent an ancient form of writing. These inscriptions have been identified by epigrapher Barry Fell as Phoenician, suggesting contact between pre-Columbian America and Mediterranean seafaring cultures. Fell's work, published in his controversial 1976 book, America BC, has been systematically attacked by mainstream academia, despite the fact that no one has successfully explained what these inscriptions actually are, if not writing. The mainstream explanation that colonial farmers built this elaborate complex for reasons unknown, created precise astronomical alignments by accident, carved meaningless symbols that happened to resemble ancient Mediterranean writing, and then left no historical record of their work, stretches credibility to its breaking point. Before we proceed deeper into the prehistoric past, we must pause to examine one of America's most enigmatic modern mysteries, a mystery that may connect directly to the ancient knowledge we're investigating. In June 1979, a well-dressed stranger walked into the Elberton Granite Finishing Company in rural Georgia and commissioned what would become one of America's most controversial monuments. Using the pseudonym R.C. Christian,
a name that immediately suggested connections to Rosicrucianism and esoteric secret societies. This mysterious individual ordered the construction of a granite monument to rival Stonehenge itself. The Georgia Guidestones, completed in 1980, consisted of 6 granite slabs weighing over 237,000 pounds total, arranged to mark astronomical events, including solstices and equinoxes. Carved into the stones were 10 guidelines for humanity, written in 8 modern languages: English, Spanish, Swahili, Hindi, Hebrew, Arabic, traditional Chinese, and Russian. But the truly mysterious elements were the additional inscriptions in 4 ancient languages: Babylonian cuneiform, Classical Greek, Sanskrit, and Egyptian hieroglyphs. These inscriptions, positioned at the top of the structure, seemed to acknowledge a continuity of knowledge stretching back thousands of years. The guidelines themselves called for maintaining humanity's population below 500 million, governing with tempered reason, and avoiding petty laws and useless officials. These directives, combined with the monument's astronomical alignments, suggested either prophecy or planning for a post-apocalyptic world. R.C. Christian revealed to the Granite Company's president that he represented a small group of loyal Americans who had been planning the monument for over 20 years. He paid in cash, provided precise engineering specifications that demonstrated sophisticated mathematical and astronomical knowledge, and then vanished completely. Despite numerous investigations, his true identity remained unknown. The Guidestones stood for 42 years until July 6, 2022, when an explosion destroyed one of the stones. Within hours, authorities demolished the remaining structure, citing safety concerns. Security camera footage showed a figure approaching the monument moments before the blast, but no arrest has ever been made, and the official investigation has been effectively closed. What knowledge died with the Georgia Guidestones, and what connection might these modern enigmatic builders have shared with America's ancient megalithic constructors?
Scattered throughout the forests of New England, hidden beneath centuries of leaf litter and undergrowth, lie over 300 stone chambers whose origins have never been satisfactorily explained. These structures, found primarily in Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Connecticut, share architectural features that defy the colonial root cellar explanation that mainstream archaeology reflexively offers. The chambers are typically built into hillsides, featuring corbelled stone roofs, massive capstones weighing several tons, and entrances oriented toward specific astronomical events. Many feature interior dimensions that precisely match sacred geometrical ratios found in ancient European megalithic structures, ratios that colonial American farmers would have had no reason or knowledge to incorporate. The Upton Chamber in Massachusetts represents perhaps the most impressive example. This structure features a beehive-shaped interior reached through a 14-foot-long entrance passage. The chamber's design is virtually identical to passage tombs found in Ireland and Britain, dating to 3000 BCE. During the summer solstice, sunlight travels down the entrance passage and illuminates the chamber's rear wall, an alignment that couldn't be accidental. In 2012, researcher James Maver conducted thermoluminescence testing on stones from several New England chambers. This dating method, which measures when stone was last exposed to intense heat, produced dates clustering around 800–1000 CE, centuries before Columbus, but consistent with possible Norse exploration. However, other dating methods have produced far older results. Charcoal deposits found beneath several chambers have yielded carbon dates exceeding 4000 BCE. If accurate, these dates suggest that the chambers either represent continuous use over millennia or that they were built by a civilization we've never identified. The Gungy Complex in Groton, Connecticut,
offers additional mysteries. This site features 2 stone circles, numerous stone chambers, and a double circle of stones that precisely aligns with both the equinox sunrise and sunset. Petroglyphs carved into exposed bedrock at the site have been tentatively identified as Phoenician, Oham, and Libyan, writing systems from 3 separate ancient Mediterranean cultures. How did these writing systems arrive in Connecticut? The mainstream answer is that they didn't, that these inscriptions are either natural weathering patterns or colonial-era graffiti. But this explanation requires us to believe that random weathering coincidentally produced symbols matching known ancient alphabets, and that colonial farmers, who left meticulous records of nearly everything they built, created elaborate stone chambers while recording nothing. The Great Serpent Mound, an astronomical computer in stone and earth. In the rolling hills of southern Ohio, a quarter-mile-long earthwork snake winds across a ridge overlooking Brush Creek. The Great Serpent Mound, visible only from above, represents one of the most sophisticated astronomical monuments ever constructed on American soil, and mainstream archaeology cannot explain who built it. The serpent's body undulates in 7 deep curves before terminating at a coiled tail. Its head, oriented toward the summer solstice sunset, opens to an oval shape that some researchers interpret as an egg, while others see a depiction of the sun being swallowed. The entire structure demonstrates precise understanding of astronomical events that, according to conventional history, the mound builders shouldn't have possessed. Initial excavations in the 1880s found no artifacts within the mound itself, suggesting it served ceremonial rather than burial purposes. Carbon dating of charcoal found at the site has produced conflicting results, with dates ranging from 300 BCE to 1000 CE. This discrepancy has never been resolved, and many researchers suspect that the mound was constructed, abandoned, and then reused by later cultures. But the truly fascinating element is the mound's alignment. The serpent's head points directly toward the summer solstice sunset. The first 3 curves of its body align with the 2 solstices and equinox, and the coiled tail seems to represent the constellation Draco, a constellation that held special significance in ancient Egyptian star religion. The connection to Egyptian cosmology doesn't end there. In Egyptian mythology, the serpent Apep, sometimes called Apophis, was the enemy of the sun god Ra, constantly attempting to devour the sun during its nightly journey through the underworld. The serpent mound's design, a snake appearing to swallow an oval object while oriented toward the setting sun, mirrors this mythology with disturbing precision. Coincidence? Perhaps, but similar serpent mounds exist in Ontario, Canada, and in Scotland, and all 3 share the same astronomical alignments. The mystery of Point, a civilization that shouldn't exist. In 1953, archaeologist James Ford stood at the edge of a Louisiana cotton field and realized that what he was seeing was impossible. The geometric earthworks stretching before him, 6 concentric C-shaped ridges, multiple mounds, and precisely arranged post-hole patterns represented construction on a scale that North American indigenous peoples supposedly hadn't achieved for another 3,000 years. Point, as the site came to be known, would eventually be carbon dated to approximately 1700 BCE, making it contemporary with the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. The complex covered over 400 acres. The outer ridge measured 3/4 of a mile diameter, and the largest mound, known today as Point Mound, rose 72 feet and measured 710 feet by 660 feet at its base, containing over 8 million cubic feet of earth. To construct Mound A alone would have required moving approximately 15.5 million 50-pound basket loads of soil. Assuming a workforce of 1,000 laborers working continuously, the mound would have taken at least 90 days to complete. This level of organization, this ability to coordinate massive labor forces, simply wasn't supposed to exist in North America during the Bronze Age. But the construction labor isn't the deepest mystery of Porty Point. The site's geometry is precise to a degree that suggests sophisticated mathematical knowledge. The 6 ridges maintain consistent spacing despite following a C-shaped curve. The post circles appear to mark astronomical events, and artifacts found at the site, thousands of small baked clay objects called Porty Point objects, or PPOs, demonstrate standardized manufacturing processes that imply centralized production and distribution. Most significantly, raw materials found at Porty Point originated from locations hundreds of miles away. Copper came from the Great Lakes region, galena came from Missouri, soapstone came from the Appalachian Mountains, and magnetite, a form of iron ore with magnetic properties, came from as far away as present-day Arkansas. This trade network implies organization, transportation capabilities, and economic systems comparable to Old World Bronze Age civilizations. Yet mainstream archaeology insists that the builders of Porty Point were complex hunter-gatherers who somehow achieved civilization-level construction without actually being civilized. The cognitive dissonance is remarkable.
In 1992, German toxicologist Svetlana Balabanova was conducting routine testing on Egyptian mummies at the Munich Museum when her equipment produced impossible results. The mummies, dated to approximately 1000 BCE, contained significant traces of cocaine and nicotine. Both substances were derived exclusively from plants native to the Americas, plants that supposedly weren't known to exist until Columbus's voyages 2,500 years later. Balabanova initially assumed contamination or equipment malfunction. She repeated her tests using different equipment, different samples, and independent laboratories. The results remained consistent. The mummies contained American plant alkaloids. The implications were staggering. If authentic, this evidence proved that contact existed between ancient Egypt and the Americas, contact involving trade of significant quantities of coca leaves and tobacco. Such trade would require regular transatlantic voyages, established trade routes, and ongoing relationships between civilizations on opposite sides of the world. Mainstream archaeology's response was predictable. Denial. The mummies were fake. The tests were flawed. The contamination came from modern contact with tobacco-smoking museum workers. Any explanation, however implausible, was preferable to admitting that ancient Egyptians might have reached America. But Balabanova's findings didn't exist in isolation. In 1975, retired chemist Alexander Sumak analyzed stone pipe residue from ancient Egyptian artifacts and found tobacco traces. In 1960, explorer Jean Savoy documented what he identified as Egyptian hieroglyphics carved into Peruvian cave walls. And throughout the 19th century, archaeologists reported finding Egyptian-style artifacts throughout the American Midwest, artifacts that were subsequently lost, destroyed, or locked away in museum storage, never to be publicly displayed. The conspiracy of silence surrounding evidence of ancient transatlantic contact isn't subtle. It's systematic, coordinated, and ruthlessly enforced. The Tucson artifacts, a Roman outpost in Arizona? In 1924, a man named Charles Manier was clearing land near Tucson, Arizona, when his workmen discovered lead objects buried 6 feet below the desert surface. These artifacts, swords, crosses, religious symbols, and texts written in Latin and Hebrew, seemed to document a Roman-era colony in the American Southwest.
The objects, eventually numbering over 30 individual pieces, told a consistent narrative. According to the Latin inscriptions, a group identified as Romans had established a settlement around 800 CE, battled with indigenous peoples, and maintained their colony for at least 75 years. The artifacts included references to Roman emperors, Christian prayers, and dates calculated using the Roman system. Dr. Byron Cummings, head of the University of Arizona's Archaeology Department, conducted the initial excavations. His team documented the artifacts' stratigraphic context, demonstrating that they were found in undisturbed soil deposits consistent with centuries of burial. Cummings remained convinced of the artifact's authenticity until his death, despite relentless attacks from academic colleagues. The Tucson artifacts were declared hoaxes almost immediately after their discovery, not because of any scientific analysis, but because their implications were academically unacceptable. A Roman colony in Arizona would require rewriting American history from the ground up. Careers would be destroyed, textbooks would become worthless, and the academic establishment's authority would be permanently undermined. The Tucson artifacts were relegated to storage at the Arizona State Museum, where they remain today, neither displayed nor seriously studied, simply ignored. But questions persist. If the artifacts were hoaxes, who created them? Charles Manier was a semi-literate laborer with no classical education. The Latin inscriptions, while containing some grammatical irregularities, demonstrate knowledge of medieval Latin conventions that a 1920s Arizona worker wouldn't possess. The lead alloy compositions match Roman-era metallurgy rather than modern lead, and similar artifacts have been reported, and similarly ignored, at sites throughout the American Southwest. The mystery of the Lake Winnipesaukee stone. In 1872, workers digging a post hole near Lake Winnipesaukee, New Hampshire, uncovered an egg-shaped object stone that has mystified researchers for 150 years. The Mystery Stone, as it came to be known, measures approximately 4 inches long and features precise carvings on all surfaces: a face, an ear of corn, a circle, a spiral, a deer leg, a teepee, and an inverted arrow. The stone also features 2 holes bored through its body at both ends, holes that were clearly created with metal tools, as they display the even, smooth surfaces characteristic of mechanical drilling rather than manual percussion. Here's the problem. The geological layer where the stone was found dates to a period when, according to conventional history, no metal tools existed in North America. The lake itself was formed approximately 10,000 years ago during glacial retreat. The soil layers above the stone's discovery location had remained undisturbed since initial deposition. Chemical analysis confirmed that the stone was quartzite, a material not native to the immediate area. Someone had transported this stone, carved it with sophisticated tools, and then either buried it deliberately or lost it in circumstances that allowed geological processes to cover it with millennia of accumulated soil. The Mystery Stone currently resides in the collection of the New Hampshire Historical Society, where it is displayed without explanation. Every attempt to identify its creators, date its manufacture, or explain its purpose has failed. It remains exactly what its name suggests: a mystery.
The Dighton Rock has confused observers since the first English colonists documented its existence in 1680. This 40-ton boulder, originally located in the Taunton River in Massachusetts, features heavily weathered petroglyphs that have been interpreted at various times as Native American, Norse, Phoenician, Portuguese, and Chinese. Cotton Mather, the famous Puritan minister, recorded the rock's inscriptions in 1690, speculating that they might record ancient Phoenician voyages. In the 18th century, French scholar Antoine Court de Gebelin claimed the inscriptions were Carthaginian. 19th century Danish scholars argued for Norse origins, and in 1912, Brown University professor Edmund Delabarre identified what he believed was a Latin inscription reading Miguel Cortoril, 1511, evidence of Portuguese exploration predating the Pilgrims by over a century. Modern analysis has failed to definitively identify the inscription's origin, largely because centuries of weathering, vandalism, and amateur enhancement have obscured the original markings. But beneath these accumulated damages, researchers have identified at least 3 distinct carving styles, suggesting that the rock served as a landmark for multiple cultures over an extended period. The Dighton Rock now resides in a museum specifically built to house it, protected from further damage, but no closer to revealing its secrets. The Louisiana expedition, evidence of ancient bronze working. In 1862, during the Civil War, Union soldier Augustus Mitchell was digging defensive trenches near the Mississippi River when his shovel struck metal. What he uncovered would challenge everything archaeologists thought they knew about ancient American metallurgy. Mitchell found a cache of bronze implements, axes, chisels, and wedge-shaped tools buried several feet below the surface in river sediment. The bronze composition, when analyzed decades later, matched Old World Bronze Age metallurgy rather than any known Native American metalworking tradition. Native Americans did work copper extensively, but bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, supposedly wasn't produced in pre-Columbian America. Mitchell's discovery was reported in several newspapers of the era, then quietly forgotten. The artifacts themselves vanished into private collections, and when researchers finally attempted to locate them in the 1920s, they had disappeared completely. But Mitchell's find wasn't unique. Throughout the 19th century, farmers, construction workers, and amateur archaeologists reported discovering bronze and iron objects in stratigraphic contexts that predated European contact. These discoveries were invariably dismissed as modern intrusions, misidentifications, or hoaxes, despite the reporters' consistent descriptions and the object's circumstances of discovery. The pattern is unmistakable. Evidence that challenges the conventional narrative disappears. The astronomical alignments of Cahokia Woodhenge. At Cahokia Mounds in Illinois, the largest pre-Columbian settlement north of Mexico, archaeologists made a remarkable discovery in the 1960s. Hidden beneath the surface, they found evidence of multiple woodhenges, circles of massive red cedar posts arranged to mark astronomical events with remarkable precision. The largest reconstructed woodhenge features 48 posts arranged in a circle roughly 410 feet in diameter. From a central observation post, specific posts align perfectly with the summer solstice sunrise, the winter solstice sunrise, and the equinox sunrises. Additional posts may have marked lunar standstills, extreme positions of the moon that occur on an 18.6-year cycle. Understanding lunar standstills requires sophisticated astronomical observation spanning multiple generations. The builders of Cahokia's Woodhenge weren't casual skywatchers. They were systematic scientists maintaining observational records over periods measured in decades. Cahokia itself challenges conventional historical narratives. At its peak, around 1100 CE, the settlement housed between 10,000 and 20,000 people, larger than London at the same period. Its central feature, Monk's Mound, rises 100 feet above the surrounding floodplain and contains approximately 22 million cubic feet of earth, all moved by hand. The civilization that built Cahokia arose rapidly, flourished for approximately 2 centuries, and then collapsed equally rapidly around 1300 CE. The causes of this collapse remain unclear, but the sophistication of what they built remains evident in the archaeological record.
Yet this civilization receives barely a footnote in standard American history education.